Good morning and welcome. The first dinner we have this morning would be the Office of Capital Post-Conviction Counsel. So if you would go ahead and tell us what you'd like for us to know.
I'm Chrissy Noble. I'm the Director of Capital Post-Conviction. This is my second year as Director. I'm Chrissy Noble. This is my second year as Director of Capital Post-Conviction. And with me today is Denise from Cornerstone, who helps with our budget, as well as my office administrator, Alyssa. And I'll tell you a little bit about our personnel because it's a little bit different than last year. We looked over everything to see what we could consolidate, if anything. So last year, when I came over here, we were at 10 employees. We are now at 9. What we did is we had 2 legal assistants and we combined that position so we could have a paralegal / office administrator. And fortunately, we were lucky to steal Alyssa from private practice to help us keep all of our death penalty files organized because they are very, very large. So we are now at 9 employees. We have 5 lawyers, including me, 2 mitigation specialists, 1 investigator, and 1 office administrator. And at any given time, we represent most of the folks on death row. There are times when we have co-defendants and thus conflicts, and we then follow the statutory scheme to appoint outside counsel. But we represent all of them in their state post-conviction proceedings. So everything that comes after a trial, you go up on appeal, and then you have post-conviction proceedings where you can bring up new evidence that wasn't presented at trial, whether it's DNA evidence or a jury type claim. So we represent all of those folks. I would say right now we probably have 15-ish truly active cases. I get asked that question a lot, how many are active at any given time? And that's sometimes a hard number to say, just because even if a case doesn't look active, if you looked at someone's docket, it doesn't mean that we're not investigating it for new facts or new law. If there is a new law from the US Supreme Court or the Mississippi Supreme Court, that gives us grounds to file a successor petition. There are a little bit less than 40 men and women on death row, with all of the men being at Parchment and our single female on death row being at Central Mississippi Correctional Facility. So you have the right to effective assistance of post-conviction counsel in Mississippi. So we try our best to do it right on the front end, so we don't have to do it twice on the back end. And this year, unlike last year, we are actually asking just for level funding plus a salary increase just to comply with newly passed law. Because Denise does our budget and is so good at it, I usually let her talk about the specifics of it.
As you've already heard, we had asked for level funding, and except for salaries. The legislative budget recommendation went ahead and gave us what we requested in salaries so that we could give the pay raises that were enacted last year. The one thing that was not included in salaries that we have added to the budget since the time we turned in the original budget is the 5% increase that may go into effect for retirement that will begin in October. So we went ahead and put in the $31,000 for that, just in case that does come to forward, so that you will know what our needs are. The only thing that happened is, because it's a general fund agency, the one thing that to give us the pay raises that we needed, the money was taken out of our contractual budget to kind of give us the same amount that was in general fund. But what I wanted to point out was the fact that last year we had special fund appropriations that was left over from when they were getting their money from criminal assessments. There's still $215,000 in that special fund. And you've given us the authority to spend that every year. And you've also given us the authority that we needed in the general funds. This agency is very, very frugal. And they also have very fluctuating budgets. And so for the last 3 years, every year they've been able to return an average of $103,000 back to the general fund. And in 2 years, you've reappropriated that money. And so in order to make the agency level at where we requested plus that salary, we are suggesting that we can either use the balance that's still in our special funds. We still have that 215,000. We also returned 158,000 into the general fund last year that was not reappropriated. So that is also an opportunity to use that money so that we can not have to ask for more general funds and still get the funding that we're requesting.
Okay, you ever have any questions?
Can you define contractual?
Contractual expense is pretty much the majority of this budget. So anytime we have to go for outside counsel, if we need to hire investigators or somebody, social workers or anybody to go in to do any of that extra work that's not handled by the staff, that is pretty much everything that's handled in the contractual. Other things that are interesting that are contractual are things like postage. So anytime it's a service that is hired, is considered contractual.
So it's not a lack of personnel.
I'm sorry, could you say that one more time?
Your pens, you have enough pens as far as to fulfill what you're doing right now.
I do. I don't think we need a bigger office than our 9 current employees, but contractual also includes any kind of like experts we may need. So I would say every case, especially if it's a capital cases have 2 trials, the sentencing phase is just, is there a reason that you should not have been given death? You should have been given a life sentence. That's usually going to be a forensic psychiatrist, a neuropsych. So our contracts depend. I mean, in one of them, we've got, there's a voicemail issue that got someone to capital murder. We don't think it's our client. It is an actual innocence case. So we've actually hired a nationally recognized forensic linguist to look at that. So a lot of the contractual is going to be expert based, not anything we need another pen for, but stuff we need to prove our case.
Okay. Is there anything closing you'd like to tell us, or if not, we thank you for coming.
No, thank you guys. I think it's, you guys have done a good job of funding this agency, and we really do try to do it right on the front end instead of twice on the back end.
No problem. Thank you very much.
In front of the Chief Justice. The handouts that I gave out last week. Yes. Yes. Tell you gotta keep adding stuff and adding stuff. I've been doing this a long time. I should be involved. Completely unrelated. Not that I would allow something without showing it to opposing counsel first, but I'm Andre Degree, State Public Defender. We run
Turn the mic on.
Okay, Andre Degree, State Public Defender. We run 5 programs. We have Capital Defense, which is the death penalty trial program that I started in 2001. It's still operating as one of our divisions. We have Indigent Appeals, which handles primarily felony appeals. We have Training and Technical Assistance Division that is where we touch public defenders everywhere in the state. Our system in Mississippi is we have 82 public defender systems that operate at the county level, and sometimes multiple within each county. And then the state defender provides training to all of those, or makes training available to all those public defenders, and any help they need on specific cases going along, they can call our office, get research assistance, brainstorm cases, whatever they need. We started about officially just a couple of years ago, but we were brought into child welfare cases by you in 2016. We started with training. In 2018, we started assisting funding some of these local projects. These are lawyers who represent parents in CPS cases. So it's almost all it's in youth court. Sometimes if the case moves on to TPR, we would stay with that case through the end. We also do a number of appeals. Before, our program manager for this project was the parent defender in DeSoto County, and we brought her in 2 years ago so that we have someone full-time in our office working with these lawyers. She also does the appeals on any child welfare cases. And the lack of appeals was one of the concerns that the Supreme Court had and the Children's Justice Commission had over the years, that the lawyers were just not developing the law, and you do that through an appellate practice. So we have introduced that. It's only a handful of cases that actually get to that point, but we're now handling about 4 or 5 appeals, and that is almost all of the appeals in this area. So just kind of in the material, as was alluded to by the last person, we are the salaries for lawyers in our programs, and we have 12 lawyers across the 4 programs, and they are tied to the DA salary scale. The DA's got a salary increase. You increased our salary. So what was designated for those increases last year, and we have now, because they went into effect in January, we've now given them those raises, that the cost estimate last year was $58,000. Our increase to LBR was about $40,000. So our first issue is we need to get that up to that $48,000 so we can pay a full year of those pay raises. The second issue is that I'm presenting to you here is this parent representation. It's a new thing. Until 2012, Mississippi was the only state that did not provide lawyers to parents who were at risk of losing their children. It got started with work between the Children's Justice Commission at the Supreme Court and the Casey Foundation. And they funded some pilot projects. And then eventually when we came in 2018 with some state money, we started doing this jointly. And so the Casey programs were being run through the AOC. And then we were running programs through our office. And this summer, with the changes in administration at the AOC, the new director, Greg Snowden, and his team thought it was not efficient to be running two programs. Sometimes even in one situation, it was overlapping. Not that we still don't think we were covering all the parents, but because we had a lawyer operating in a legal services office who could go to multiple counties. And when caseloads shift from one county to another, the lawyer can shift with that, as opposed to one lawyer having to stay in one county. So we have Forest County is being represented by a lawyer through one of our programs and a local lawyer funded in part by the Casey program. So we're trying to bring all of that together. So there's going to be one central, we're the one central place to do training. So this will make one central place for the cash flow. We are waiting on the actual contract from Casey on what they are contributing, what they're going to contribute this year. They do it on a calendar year, not our fiscal year and not the county's fiscal year. So causes a lot of confusion in figuring that out. But what I've done is I've got a spreadsheet of where we are in state fiscal year 23. And these are so this will show you the counties. The green highlighted counties are the counties where the most children are. And that's where, as we push out, we think right now, best estimate between the data from the Casey programs and from our programs, we're probably covering about half of the need in the state. We've got about 70% and we're not looking at the number of counties, we're looking at where the children are. So we're probably at 70% of the jurisdictions or the courts out there have access to a lawyer, and about 70% of the parents are getting representation or full representation. And we're developing some of this as pilot projects. The Lee County project is a good example. It's where we're moving. It's where the country's moving to include social workers in the offices, or in that case, in the projects, because the social workers are county employees, the lawyers are contractors, like our typical public defenders. And we're just being flexible on what's going to work locally, how this can best work to get the job done. So based on, you look at this and what the total need is on the top line and the available funds is on the second line, the significant reduction in the Casey grant is reflected there. We're going to have a shortage this year. But we're not going to ask for a deficit appropriation on that because we have a solution. We think we have a solution. But Casey, and they've told us, they started telling us in October that the grants they give out are controlled more by how the stock market does than anything else. This is not a reflection that they're pulling out of Mississippi or they're not happy with the programs. They've been here for a decade. The amount of money they have to give has shrunk, and so they're shrinking everybody. So with the cut that went into effect on January 1, about $80,000 from a 200 and numbers, and about 300, a little over 300 from two grants is going to go down to about 230. Currently, last year, you appropriated $136,500 to the AOC. While we were still running these two programs, one out of the court and one out of my office. And so we've worked with them, and we believe Carol Allgood has told us she has, and I believe it's met with elbow to make sure we can do this. But we have a way of getting either for them to use that money because they hadn't allocated it for anything. So it's just sitting there, that we would be able to use that to cover the KC fund loss. So none of these counties lose money mid-year. So we're gonna be able to do that, and then so what we're asking for is we need to, right now with what the LBR recommendation is, we would have 294,000 that we could dedicate to these county grants or subsidies or local to have lawyers in the local courts. And the need just to maintain is the 116.5. We're asking for an additional 125 to expand one of the original programs that in 2012, the Center for Legal Services in Gulfport started providing a lawyer. We took over that program and expanded it to Hattiesburg. So we've got a lawyer who can cover those counties. They cover up to 10 counties. We want to do the same thing in North Mississippi Rural Legal Services so that they can reach multiple counties with one lawyer as opposed to trying to establish part-time contracts in each of those counties. And then also adding a social worker to the South Mississippi office. So the total with doing those two things and maintaining the existing programs, we would need 538.5. And I just remind you, just as we're using the money from the that's in the general fund appropriation to the court this year, that's a set off. That's money out there that's been allocated that could be added to cover this part of this parent rep additional ask that we're asking for. So before I move into the most important thing to me, and I hope to you, do we have any questions?
Let's see, Mel.
On your parent defense that you're presenting now, have you seen a reduction in the false or termination of claims of abuse since your representation for the parents are at the front end instead of after a judge has been?
Yeah, what we see, I don't know about whether we could say it's a false claim, but what we have when we look at the data on where our cases are, where our lawyers are working and on where the AOC lawyers were working and where no lawyers were working, the reductions in the number of kids in care. So we're just taking the CPS data because it's the most reliable data we have. So the reduction in the number of children in foster care is greater in the counties where you have the public defenders. But it's hard to track because I alluded to the need to move from one county to another. Removals happen in places when strange things happen, like you have an explosion of drugs in a particular county. We saw that with Marion County a few years ago, and then we've been able to bring it back down. Similar changes at CPS, they recognize some internal problems in Lee County, and the numbers in Lee County shot way up. Now they're coming down. I would say it's definitely not solely based on what we're doing. I mean, to be honest, it's the judge has a whole lot of power and is the most influential person for good or for bad. But we do, and since the tracking started on about 5 years ago, consistently the cases that the jurisdictions that have a legislatively funded position or lower are going down faster than the others. The whole population went from just a few years ago over 7,000 to under 4,000. So the whole system is getting better. You know, we got sued. It had to get better, but it really has gotten better. And we really feel like I should have brought Judge Bevel with me from Lee County, that where we're introducing social workers into it. And the latest thing we've done is introduced peer mentors. So parents who have been through the system, they've got their children back and their lives are together. We then partnered with the Department of Mental Health, who does a peer mentor training for people with addiction issues. We use their training as a base, and then we do supplemental training specifically on the child welfare system. So we have some peer mentors, one on the coast, that is 2 counties on the coast, and one in Lee County. That's not in our budget request here. We want to give it a few more years. I think it's going to really be a good thing and what we want to do. But we're introducing that. You really need that social worker there first as you introduce it. And then we need the capacity, and we can do that in our budget, to have lawyers can't be supervising social workers. We need, and so we're bringing in someone as a program coordinator below the director, whose background is in social work and can train and make sure, monitor the social workers we have working in the field. It's a little bit different than what the caseworker from CPS does, because it's all from the parent's perspective. They are truly the parent's social worker, not the agency social worker.
But thank you. It's an ongoing battle, but I believe that number was around 6,400 and rising. And the big part of it is the way the social worker from CPS was, let's get it down the road. So they had the parents signing, they hadn't done nothing wrong, but abuse had taken place, and the parent thinks that they're doing this with the aspect that we're getting the child back. But that is starting the process, and it's 18 months later, and everything's in turmoil on the home front when there was nothing there to start with. So I commend y'all for addressing that and the hard work y'all doing on that.
And I would just say, one thing that was shocking to me is that we picked up a case on appeal and there was clear error, but and the chancellor who did the TPR recognized the error, but felt that his hands were tied because he was bound by the record in the youth court where the referee had made findings and there weren't objections made. And so we lost the case, not because there was an error in the case. We lost the case because the parent never had a lawyer in the youth court or with the referee. And that is, once the referee makes those findings, the chancellor can't go behind them. So there's lots of big problems that go well beyond what we're able to do, but not having us there makes those problems worse.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Andre, real quickly, because I know we've got some other committee hearings, but in that situation where you have a finding or a ruling and the chancellor can't go behind the youth court or the referee, is that something that you could take up the Office of Post-Conviction Counsel or somebody else could pick up on appeal? It's not what you would deal with, but somebody else could pick up that.
No,
Certainly that's appealable if the decision was in error.
we took that to the, we lost in the Court of Appeals and filed a cert to the Mississippi Supreme Court. We have the capacity, it's really not, post-conviction is a civil procedure for a criminal case.
Well, is it a de novo hearing at the appellate level? It should be if it's not.
I think that's what we argued, but we really, it is an issue that needs to be addressed, and I don't know, and I don't know enough about this area of law to know whether that needs to be addressed through legislation. The county courts, the youth courts are creations of the legislature, but they are also under the rules of the court. But that is something that is in ongoing discussions in the Children's Justice Commission. And I will say that there's a bill from Senator Boyd to create a task force to look at this whole thing. And I would say I'm not usually the one who wants to encourage you to have another task force. I think that would be an important task force to have.
Okay. One quick question, Mr. Chairman, if I may, on your request for increases in pay, is that to get certain folks up to the minimum under SPB, under the SEC square?
This is just attorneys. We did that adjustment at the beginning of the year. We're actually not under the personnel board, but we used SEC squared to make sure our people were, the non-lawyers were already in that area, that they were getting paid the same as what personnel board employees would.
So that's what the request, that when you reference, I think reference the House bill, or it's been referenced as to what it is. So it's just trying to keep the people.
That's the attorney raises, district attorney raises they were
Gotcha.
authorized last year,
Okay.
but they didn't take effect till January.
All right.
So the amount we got this year was only for half a year. And so we're asking for the other half a year.
Thank you. Thank you.
So-
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And I just, the other document I gave you, and I know I'm running out of time, but is this concept paper from the Neighborhood Defender Service. At some point, the legislature needs to invest in indigent defense. We're doing very little and pouring millions into the prosecution, into the courts. And the counties are having to try to meet a constitutional mandate on their own. We've got in our original budget request, we were asking for pilot projects, one in South Mississippi, North Mississippi, and this project in Hinds County, or really, this is specific to Jackson. A lot of stuff going on. Today, we are running a special defender unit in Jackson, just 2 blocks from here, where we're handling cases in Hinds County through an ARPA grant. The paper I brought in this morning is a report on how that's working, what we're doing on that project. It's really too early to say how it's going, but it tells you what we're doing with this project that really we had people in the courtroom on August 1. And the courts didn't get organized till October 1. But we've had people working since August 1. We think it's helping in Jackson, in Hinds County, but there needs to be a permanent help for Jackson and Hinds County. And I think this would do it. It is a different way of providing defense. It would be unique in Mississippi, but it's being done in other parts of the country. And it's being done by this organization. So they have proven they can do it. And so I look forward to future discussions.
Okay. So we appreciate your coming, and everything will be taken into consideration. And if you have any further questions, get back with us. If we have any, we'll get back with you. All right,
Thank you.
for coming. Judicial performers. Thank you for coming and your patience as we are running a little bit behind, so. Okay. Good deal. Turn your mic on. Right, just. Hold it.
There we
Yeah,
go.
there you go.
You'll notice that I'm sorry, I'm Rachel Wilson with Judicial Performance. I'm the Executive Director. And you'll notice that I didn't provide you with a handout this morning because the elbow recommendation is a mere $13,688 short of what we asked for. I'm not going to quibble over nickels and dimes, but if you don't mind, we would like that $13,688 back. Specifically, I want to tell you more importantly than the numbers is what we've been able to do with the monies that you all have given us. In years past, we have historically had salaries that were lower than the state attorney averages and certainly not competitive with the civilian sector. Having said that, because you all gave us the monies to rectify that, we have been able to hire the right people that have done a fantastic job. And if you'll allow me an opportunity to brag on them, the increase in the number of complaints that we have received and serviced in the 3 years that I have served as executive director has almost doubled. And we have handled every one of them. Our numbers are last calendar year, we had 391 complaints that we serviced. We investigated 149 of those. We serviced 3,259 calls. I want to stop just a moment there on the calls because a lot of those calls came from judges who want to do the right thing for your constituents, for the state of Mississippi, and for litigants and people who appear before them. And I think that's part of our job. If we can help judges get to the right answer, to do the right thing for those people, then you've done your job and I've done mine. So those 3,259 calls represent judges in a lot of circumstances that wanted to get to the right answer, and we were able to steer them in the right direction for doing that. Out of those numbers, we also serviced 10 trainings, and those trainings are not just for judges, they're also for court staff, clerks, law clerks, the court clerks, all of the people who are involved in the court system so that they understand who we are, what we do, and that we are a resource for them also. There is not a state court judge in the state of Mississippi that doesn't have my personal cell phone number. I do tell them I will block them if they abuse it, and I have done that. But never mind that. Also, the circuit clerks, the chancery clerks, the county court clerks, if a clerk needs to get to the right answer and we aren't available during regular business hours, they can usually find someone that will give them my cell phone number. And we do actually respond to those things because it's important to us that we give the members, the state of Mississippi constituency, the right answer and the right product. We also attended 25 meetings. Some of those were our commission meetings. Some of those were meetings with judges for settlement purposes. And we were able to settle all of the formal complaints that came before us without litigating any case, which means we didn't use resources for court reporters. We didn't use resources for the Supreme Court, and we didn't have to use any paper to copy those to go to the Supreme Court. So we're not arguing about the number of reams of paper that we get. Having said that, we also enjoy a fantastic commission. The members and the alternates are so committed to doing the right thing and getting to the right place that I do want to give each one of them a shout out in case you recognize the names from your areas. Ryan Brule is a justice court judge out of Marion County, excuse me, who is our current commission chairman. We've also got Wes Curry, Jim Person, Stephen Bailey, Smith Murphy, Stan Sorey, Pat Bennett, and Jennifer Johnson, who are the new appointees. Cornelia Gaden, Robert Graves, Colonel retired Sylvanus Johnson, Jeff Adcock, Rochelle Lumpkin, and Ed Hannon. All of those people have stepped up to do all of the work that we have had with these almost double increase in the number of complaints that we have received. That being said, the staff is really the ones that have been able to show up and show out, if you will. Our investigator, Danny Perry, is the one who had lead point on those 149 complaints. Ashley May is our senior staff attorney who has taken every formal complaint in there and learned it soup to nuts and been ready to try it and was responsible for getting them settled without having to actually try them. Hunter Buxton is our office manager and somewhat of a tech magic fairy that is able to do things with technology that I don't understand and I don't want to and I don't have to because he does. And I would be remiss if I didn't point out that we had a senior staff attorney that had 10 years of experience and institutional knowledge with us that at 32 years old unexpectedly passed, which left us in a lurch, both financially and with regard to the work that was on our plates. Of course, with an agency of 5 people, that left a lurch in our hearts too. But that being said, we also had to pay out monies that we had not accounted for or anticipated, because had she retired, we wouldn't have had to pay the same amount of dollar amounts when she left as we do in her passing, because we owed for vacation time and those dollar amounts. That dollar amount was a total of $43,000. We have been able to absorb the majority of that because, as I said, you all gave me the right money to get the right people. However, that makes it a little more important that I need that $13,688. And if you want to make it 89, we wouldn't turn it down. All of that being said, I know that's a lot of information that is pressed in front of you. I will yield to any questions that you all may have.
Thank you so very much. Any questions? Senator Barr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rachel, in the past, you've talked about needing money for vehicles and other equipment and so forth. Has that been taken care of? Or are you still needing that, or?
We will eventually need a vehicle, but again, as you all may still be aware, there are no state vehicles that fit the profile of what we need because of the production that they're saying is because of COVID, and I can't prove them wrong, although I doubt it, but there are none out there to get. We are still driving the
But
car that doesn't always go in reverse.
Okay.
True story.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
Okay. No other questions? We thank you for coming and thank you for helping us to catch up.
Yes, sir.
And I'm sure, was it 40, 13, what was it?
13,688. Or you could round it up to 13,700. At 14, we wouldn't turn that down either. We may need an extra ream of paper.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Till now.
Uh, Thank you, Ms. Hood, for coming. You can go ahead and begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't know I was going to be on TV. I didn't know that the chair of the Appropriations Committee was going to be here. I feel like I should have bought a new suit before I came here. I think all of y'all know me and I know all of y'all, and I appreciate y'all giving me a chance to talk to you today. I haven't had to come over here in a couple of years. We got a few special needs this time around. It's some nuts and bolts stuff. I hope y'all won't go to sleep while I'm telling you about it. I'll try not to take too much time. This is my 20th year at the Ethics Commission, and I have never asked for deficit appropriation. I'm a big believer in making things work and being able to justify every penny of taxpayer money that we spend. And I've always tried real hard to do that. We've had a couple of unexpected things this year. One of them, I think, is the first one here, which is my number one priority. I think is the reason I'm asking for deficit this year. It's only $6,300, but it is for payroll. The health insurance, life insurance premiums went up, and I was not aware of that and did not budget for that this year. They've gone up twice this fiscal year. So that puts us in a hole $6,300. We might be able to make that up. You know, we never know. Even with a small agency and a small budget, we never know exactly how much we're going to expend. Our travel goes up and down. I mean, sometimes we have commission members come to a meeting. We've got a couple on the coast. Sometimes they'll participate by Zoom. We have that available every month now. And so, you know, you don't spend that travel money, that reimbursement money, when somebody is in the Zoom meeting. So we do have some fluctuation. We might be able to absorb that, but it's payroll. We gotta make payroll, and I felt like the responsible thing to do was come and talk to y'all about it and ask for a small deficit appropriation. While I'm here, there's a couple other things that I wanted to bring up. One is our computer network. This is real literal nuts and bolts. Details are in the memo. I'll try not to bore y'all with that, but we got to get some new equipment. I put a request in the FY24 budget request to replace our computer systems. We'd already been told it was too old to replace one piece at a time. We just need to get all new equipment. Then a piece broke, and another IT expert came in, and it's actually somebody from ITS and a guy from the private sector. We had to get both. And they said, yeah, you really don't need to wait till July. You need to replace all this stuff as soon as possible if you can. The IT guy who came in and told us that was really impressive to me. We've never had a professional IT firm help us. We've never been able to afford it. This guy gave us a really good quote. It's about $6,800 a year. And they can do everything we need. It's pretty bad at my office because I'm the IT guy and I'm not an IT guy. My assistant made a little paper hat for me that says IT expert or IT wizard, I think. And that pretty much demonstrates my lack of skill and qualifications. So we've been limping along. Does that sound familiar to some folks at LBO? I hope not. We've been limping along for a long time. Here comes this firm that ITS helped us find, and they can take care of all of our IT needs at a very reasonable price, but it's not in our budget this year or next year. So I'm asking for a small deficit appropriation of $2,800 for this year to bring that guy in, and then I think $6,800 for next year to contract with him for next fiscal year, and from there on out, hopefully. And then finally, the other change that we've had that I wanted to also bring up is that we've had two things happen with our open meetings and public records cases. We've had more complaints filed, and we've had more complex cases to deal with. So we have, I work on a lot of those cases, but I can't do all of them. We have a hearing officer who we contract with, a very highly qualified lawyer who basically works part-time for us on contract. I think her contract is about $31,000 for this year, and she's already gone through 65% of it, I think, at the halfway point in the year because of all the work she's had to do. She's willing to do more work. She's got time to do more work. And so I've asked for an additional $10,000 for this fiscal year so that she can work on this backlog, and then $15,000 more than what I already requested for next fiscal year so that she can do more work next year and try to keep our heads above water on those cases. That's everything in the memo. I also, before I forget, need to mention that the LBO recommendation doesn't completely match up with everything we requested, and I felt like I should explain that. We've requested salary increases for this year. We've requested those I think every year for the past 5 years. We're not under SPV purview, but SPV has always been kind enough to give us the data we need to try to stay where we need to be in comparison to other state employees. And so SPB last gave us a salary recommendation in 2018, and that's what we've been requesting every year. Y'all have given us some of that, and I'm just still requesting the same thing that I've been requesting since 2018. And Deb has those details. I can certainly be glad to share any of those details if y'all would like. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Do you think you picked a good year to ask for a deficit appropriation or a bad year?
I don't think there's ever a good year to ask for deficit appropriation.
Okay, well, I like your answer. Okay.
But
I understand.
and it's not my preference to
Just-
come in and ask for it, but I'm responsible for everybody that works at my agency, and and responsible for all the other duties we have. And if I got to rob from Peter to pay Paul, I think it's better to come over here and tell y'all we're looking at a deficit and ask you for some assistance.
Just joking. I appreciate that because I don't believe in deficit appropriation either, and I certainly understand. Deb and I had talked about it earlier and explained a lot of it to me. So,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I concur. I don't like deficit appropriations either. That's no fun for what we do. But Tom, seriously, on the open records requests that you have, and it seems like those must be going up. You're getting more of those, and it's perplexing to me because I think we've created here at the legislature obligations for state agencies, and I think most public entities, well, a large number have gotten online where a lot of their records are available online, meeting minutes and so forth. You got any explanation as to why? It seems like that ought to be going down because more stuff is available electronically than it used to be. What's happening? Is there some trend that we're seeing on these requests?
Most of the cases are at the local level. And I'll give you one example. We had an open meetings case last month. I think the commission approved it last month on a school board in a very large district that had a lot of violations. I mean, the hearing officer's recommendation, I think it was 14 pages long, and they had just, and the board attorneys are folks that I know, and I talked with them about it, and they said, the board had just gotten kind of lax and gotten some bad habits. And so, you get somebody who takes an interest in the board meetings because their daughter didn't make the cheerleader squad, and they start going through the minutes and looking at every detail. And, once they bring that to us, we have to write it up. So that's a pretty good example of how complex one simple case can become and how much gets billed to it when you're paying somebody by the hour. A lot of the cases, as far as the volume of them, a lot of them are a lot more simple than that. We mediate as many cases as we can. But most of them are not at the state level. Most of them are in local governments. I spoke to the county board attorneys yesterday on ethics and open meetings. I went back and looked, and we only have one case on a board of supervisors last year under the Open Meetings Act. Most of them were municipalities.
Yeah, I'm thinking more I know it's open meeting issues, but also public records is really what I was angling at.
And
I seem to be seeing more of those in work that I do. Is you got more public records requests, and yet there's more information available than ever before online.
Especially with school districts. I think school districts have come under a lot more scrutiny in the last couple of years, school boards in particular. And I'm going back to my memo. Yeah, we've got 32 public records cases and only 11 open meetings cases. So yeah, most of them are public records cases. Usually we can mediate those, but oftentimes we can't. And we just see people who, unfortunately, a lot of folks just don't know the law.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Let's see more.
Mr. Hood, how many violations or penalties have y'all requested on the violations?
In the last year or so?
Yes.
Off the top of my head, I don't know. I recall last year, there was one case in particular, an open meetings case, where there were two open meetings cases, I'm sorry, involving the same city council. The commission fined a councilman $500 in the first case and $1,000 in the second case. That's because there were 2 or 3 cases prior to that in prior years where the commission had ordered the city council not to do certain things, and this councilman did them anyway. So the commission generally doesn't fine people for a first offense or something that was not a knowing and willful offense. So we don't find that many people, and it's not necessary in most cases. But we have had a few in the recent past, and I'd be glad to get those numbers to you if you'd like.
But don't you think it's prudent when you have legal counsel, paid legal counsel sitting on the board or the commission that, you know, you are knowingly violating the Open Meetings Act, that they should pay the penalty, just like if you get a traffic ticket, you know, it's in black and white and they're not following the letter of the law, and it's right there for them to see.
Well, there are some in some of the statutes, they're knowing and willful type requirements. You have to prove that the people knew they were violating the law and did it anyway. So not every case, we don't have fines available to us in every case. The fines that we impose go into the state general fund. We don't, you know, those don't go into our budget. We don't have any revenue. We're strictly 100% general fund agency. And so certainly there's no motivation to do that other than, you know, to get people's attention. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much for coming, and we will take everything into consideration. If you have any questions or concerns, you can give us a call back. If we have any, we'll call you. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Probably run for them now. Well,
I've got one. That's for you, I think. Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure for us to be here. It always is to meet with you. And it's my opportunity today and obligation to share with you our budget request for fiscal year 2024. I'm going to carefully time myself so that I don't do what I did at the house the other day. If you will, you'll see a handout in front of you which encompasses not only our summary of our request, but also certain attachments which we think will be helpful to you. The budget summary you see at the top of the page on the first page, and the numbers are there. You're familiar with those there and what's already been submitted pretty much. The thing I want to start with is our youth court. Youth court is something that has not been funded the way the law requires. The statute, that's 43-21-801, requires annual funding of $2.5 million. That was that amount ceased to be appropriated. It was appropriated previously, but in 2011, when I was serving here, as many of you were, you recall what the fiscal situation was, and it was necessary to reduce that somewhat, as we did with all state budgets pretty much. It was reduced to $1,875,000. We need it to go back to 2.5. We have received since fiscal year 2011 $625,000 less than the statute calls for. Now, you should understand, I know you probably do, that this money flows through to our youth courts all around the state. It doesn't sit across the street. This is not our money. This is not something that the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeals hangs on to. This goes to our youth courts in your communities, and they service all the needs of the youth and children in our state. So it's a critical thing. We ask you to do that. You created 2 new courts last year, and there's a small amount there, 2 new county courts that's necessary to fund that. If you'll turn to second page, top of second page, you will see a request for trial support staff in the Chancery and Circuit Courts. This is for the basic support for the courts to hire their administrative and to fund their administrative staff and their legal staff. I have to tell you, these numbers, the $40,000 was fixed in the late 90s, and that hasn't changed. Now, in 2008, again, when I was serving in 2008, we added law clerks to that, the legal staff, and the judge can access that additional $40,000, but that's only if he has a separate law clerk, which most of them do now. But the amount itself has not changed since 2008, or rather since the late 90s. 2008 was the last time it was even addressed. There are several bills. This would require a general law change. There are several bills that have been introduced. One is I just happened to was looking at this one this morning, but it's a double referred bill in the House. It's already passed the first committee and headed for the second one. And I'm sure there may be this situation over here as well. So we ask, that is a priority for us. We ask you to address that. We also have needs for our employees at the Supreme Court and appeals levels. This is for our employees at the courts. You know what inflation has done to this country and continues to do. It's terrible. The CPI is high enough. But again, as you're probably aware, the CPI doesn't even reflect food and energy. And when I think about inflation, I think about food and energy. I know that the price of eggs has been as high as $5 in Mississippi that I'm aware of. A head of lettuce now, a small head, will cost you $2. I mean, it's crazy. And then gas has been high, has come down, and now it's creeping back up. Our employees have to deal with this just like all state employees do. And we're asking for a 7% increase. That won't come near really reflecting the true cost, but it will help significantly, and we ask for consideration for that. We also have steps that, as some agencies do for employees, they need to be funded as well. So you see the request for that. At the bottom of the page, judicial compensation. This is not anything other. This is not any new money for judges. This is not any increase. There's no judge pay raise in our request. This is simply funding for a full year and ongoing what you've already passed last year's pay bill you paid for judges, which we're very grateful for, by the way. This is just to fund that, but this is in our request to reflect that. We do have new pens that we do need. There are actually 8 here, and they're listed. I will be more than happy to go. I don't want to belabor these here, but I'll be more than happy to sit down with any member, with your analyst, to speak to the needs for these particular pens. They're all very much needed. And again, we'd be happy to tell you why and why we need them. And we would appreciate your consideration of that. There's a small amount here, relatively small amount for travel increase. As you're aware, the federal rate's gone up. We've got to, I mean, it's not, again, not money we keep. It goes through to our employees, but we have to pay them more because the law ties that to the federal level. So we need that money. This one-time expenditure at the bottom, I really want to point out to you because that is something you're familiar with already. I feel sure. You recall in November, on November 7th, I wrote a letter and sent it to the leadership calling to your attention something that had just come to our attention, the Chief Justice and myself and others at AOC, of a backlog that generates from the referrals, the hotline referrals that come through for abused and neglected children or suspected abuse and neglect. There is a backlog there, and the best our analysis tells us is that a great part of that probably is the court's employees, intake officers. There are insufficient numbers of those in these counties. Basically, paperwork sort of work to make sure the courts get the reports they're supposed to get when they receive them from CPS. We have one of the largest counties in this state, one of the largest youth court systems in the state. They have one intake officer, and he's part-time. We just need to clear this backlog. The backlog now is up in the as high as 27,000. You'll see the number in here. That backlog is something that's really, I mean, it's hit hard with the court. It's hit particularly hard with the Chief Justice. Our commitment as a court system is to clear that and get that out of the way. It can be done in fairly short order with some temporary help. That's relatively inexpensive because these are clerical workers. We're asking for clerical workers on a contract basis to eliminate this problem. And we believe we can do that a year and a half to get that done. And then the chief has pledged not to let that happen again. In closing, I won't belabor this, but on the last page, you'll see other requests. We have contractual services there. They pretty much speak for themselves. The commodities costs, that does as well. And equipment, there's a federal match there of 75%. This is done every year as far as I'm aware. We have to have a 25% match for that. Again, this is equipment that goes to youth courts. And this does not include the Board of Bar admissions or continuing commission on legal education. That's a note down there. Our summary does not include that. They're special funds, as you know, but it's separate and apart. We don't have that here, even though it is in our overall budget. So with that, I hope I hadn't run too long, but I'll be more than happy to answer any questions or attempt to do so that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Greg, good to see you. And Chief, good to see you here. I've got to run to another meeting in a minute. I wanted to ask you quickly about the backlog in the youth CPS type cases.
Yes.
I know I've spoken with Director Sanders about the issue concerning the computer system that they're
Right.
needing, and we're in the process. Do you think that'll alleviate the problem? It appears to be more of a data collection and proliferation. I know they need agents out there in the field working these cases, but
It should go a long way in the future. It's not going to eliminate this backlog. These, at least a large part of them, we believe, are stacks of paper that are already on the intake officer's desk. Now, there may be some issues.
I
Yes,
want to
sir.
be real direct on that issue because I know it's of tremendous importance to everybody in this
It is.
state. It's important more so for those 27,000 who may have missed getting into the system. We have got to clear that out. It's not a Christmas present. It's not a gift. It is a must. Now, here's the plan. What happened was in October, we had switched youth court directors. This 27,000 was not made, actually it was like 21. The first day that Greg Snowden and Mike Randolph learned about it, that number came up in a conversation and I went through the ceiling. And the problem is there is children that may not have court action in their cases because in that big stack. And we can't leave any of them out there. Not to mention the fact we'll get into trouble with the feds and all that. But I committed to the House subcommittee. I'll commit to this committee that we're going to clean it out. That number is going to zero. A good example of how that happened, though, is this, as we've investigated now. DeSoto County, considered by many to be a pretty wealthy county and a big county, is the biggest offender, has more backlog than any place else. The reason is that intake officer is an employee of the county. And DeSoto County was devoting one part-time employee to that effort. And built up a backlog of 3,000 or 4,000 cases. So we got to follow up to get it cleaned out, get it down to where it needs to be. We absolutely believe that we can get that done with the request that's made here. And we'll get it done. That's why I told them.
But it requires personnel. It requires,
It'll be,
it's cases that need to be assigned. And I understand what's going on. I just want to make sure that it's not something that's just a matter of if the information's available under their new computer system. I know we need to get on it right away. If it's
the new computer system is not needed for this. This is taking information and inputting it into the present computer system until we get a new one. It's just, it's data work. Somebody's got to take the data that the social worker brought back and put in this stack for consideration. And then at some point, once it gets into the My Kids situation, then a judge will see fit whether it needs to be addressed or not. There's probably a lot in there that no action is necessary, but we don't know that. And there's a lot in there that need action. And so, but it's basically it's data entry level. That's the reason we know that we can probably hire people for $10, $12, $15 an hour and get in and get the data in there so it gets before a judge the way it was designed by this legislature when the whole youth court system was set up. It's a terrible flaw right now, but we can't leave it unaddressed.
and you think it needs to come, I haven't spoken with Director Sanders on this, but it should come through the court's budget or through CPS budget?
She and I have met twice in the last week. We are both committed to getting it done. Because it's a youth court issue, I think it probably ought to be in our budget, but she doesn't care and I don't care which budget. We're both committed to getting it done. We have talked about it and have a very good relationship in that it's just going to get done.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
And
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
the plan we proposed for that begins on page 3 of that November 7th letter. It's not written in stone, but it is our proposal, our plan.
Chairman. Any other questions? Would it require any additional personnel? You had the personnel, once you get it set, backlog, move, we had the personnel to keep it up.
We will determine in that how many county employees, and we're going to ask the counties to step this up. I mean, that intake officer is a county employee. But once again, if we were fully funded under the Youth Court Act, that would give us money to pass through to make sure that it doesn't happen again. That's that 625. And we're not asking for all the money for all the years we got overlooked. Just we're asking for it now and also for next year. So we are asking for the deficit appropriation for 625 because it's a problem that cannot go undealt with. And that'll allow us to get people hired right now and get out there and start getting it done. And then when we go into the new budget, bring that up to 625 will allow us to have the funds to ensure that this never happens again. It's not going to happen under my watch. It did, but we've gone through 2 youth court directors. I'm very satisfied who's doing that now. It's not going to occur again. We're going to have a watchful eye out for it, but it was never brought to my attention till last October.
Senator Brandon.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm a huge supporter of the youth court system, by the way. I used to do a lot of that work before I came to the Senate. The youth court fund that we're talking about that experienced a cut over the last few years, when that money, and this may be a question for you or our budget people, I'm not sure, but when it leaves the Senate or the legislature and it's designated for the youth court fund, are there any additional strings attached? In other words, when it gets to the county level, do they determine within each county how that money is spent within their youth court system, or is there more direction from the court system on how that should look?
I think it's probably a combination, but
We have our youth court director here,
our youth court director, maybe
Emiko Hamilton.
if she met.
So statutorily, that money is required to be used for an intake officer. However, there's a caveat in the statute that if the county has already provided an intake officer, they can use it for certain other support staff that's also defined by statute.
Okay, I just want to make sure that whatever work we decide to move forward funding wise, that when it does get to the county level, it's being used in the way that we intend and that you intend. And so if there's additional language that we need to work on as far as the budget is concerned, I think that we would be open to your suggestions in that regard.
I
Understand the question?
I do.
She just wants to make sure that the money that they say that goes to the youth courts and then doesn't end up putting gravel in somebody's driveway.
That's right.
Right.
Okay.
That's all the questions.
Okay, well, thank you, Chief and staff for coming in, and we appreciate hearing from you, and we will, any questions of us, feel free to ask us. If we have any questions of you, we'll get back with you, but right now, we'd like to say thank you for coming, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Rise report.
All right, things ought to fit now. But that's more money. What it does. They have to have. Dennis, I need to give you a copy of that. But I put in. Yeah. So I. Dennis's office, the bar's office. The bar's office. Dennis DeBar's office. I just need to give him a copy of this. I told him I would.